There is frequently heard a loud noise like thunder, which makes the earth tremble. They state that they seldom go there because their children cannot sleep, and conceive it possessed of spirits who were averse that men should be near them. William Clark of the Lewis and Clark expedition, which passed just north of Yellowstone in 1806, related an Indian's narrative of a land of wonder. However, white men were not yet ready to believe the Indians' depiction of this haunted place, preferring to wait for an observation from one of their own kind. In 1807, John Coulter, a veteran of the Lewis and Clark expedition, was the first white man to enter the area, traveling alone as fur trader to the Indians. He left no written record of his impressions, but years later, Washington Irving wrote of Coulter's Hell, a volcanic tract with its gloomy terrors, its hidden fires, smoking pots, noxious streams, and the all-pervading smell of brimstone. The name Coulter's Hell came to be applied to the great hydrothermal basin in Yellowstone. The curiosities of this mysterious world are almost eclipsed by the sudden transformation when you step out to the abrupt rim of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. At the head of the 20-mile-long canyon, the Yellowstone River glides uneasily out of a dark tunnel of brooding pines, curls lazily, and drops more than 300 feet. The lower falls, twice as high as Niagara, plunge into the narrow depths of the canyon as if to cool the infernal region below the earth. massive cliffs and the brink of the lower falls were formed by the leading edge of a lava flow. The hard, dense lava has resisted erosion, unlike the softer volcanic glass lava immediately downstream. The erosive power of running water is well illustrated here, for water that drained from Yellowstone Lake helped carve the deep 1,500 to 4,000 feet wide chasm. Perhaps typical of the myriad marvels of Yellowstone, this canyon is unlike other Grand Canyons in the world. It lies wide open to the viewer. There are no hidden valleys, no mysterious and muted ways tempting the explorer to the unknown. Its shadows are in the lowering sun and those cast by an angular dying tree, its twisted roots clinging tenaciously to eroding life. This part of the canyon overlies one of the wide ring fracture zones of the Yellowstone caldera. Its steep 1,500 feet deep walls of crumbling rhyolite lava, made soft by hot water and gases filtering through, are an artist's palette of brilliant hues. Very little change has occurred in the appearance of the canyon since the melting of the glaciers 10,000 years ago. In view of the public at large, Yellowstone was not really discovered until explored by formal expeditions. But it was not until after the dark days of the Civil War that the region was successfully penetrated. Many of the geysers bear the names the expeditions gave them: Old Faithful, Grand, Beehive, Grotto, Castle, and Giantess. Anxious to reach the settlements of the Madison Valley, the Washburn-Langford-Doane expedition started on horseback into the Firehole Valley. They were astonished to see at no great distance an immense volume of clear, sparkling water projected into the air to the height of 125 feet. "Geysers, geysers!" exclaimed one of the company, and spurring their jaded horses, they soon gathered around an unexpected phenomenon, a perfect geyser. It spouted 9 times during the explorers' stay. They gave it the name of Old Faithful. With its pronounced symmetry and gracefulness of form, Old Faithful has become the symbol of Yellowstone and is the focal point of most visitors. The word geyser is Icelandic in origin and means to gush forth. In Iceland, it is pronounced geyser, and in England, geyser. The most conspicuous surface features of a geyser basin are the raised siliceous cinder cones through which geysers discharge steam and water during eruption. The silica, or geyserite, is sometimes deposited in lace-like sheets, sometimes built up into bulbous masses. Each is unique. All are strangely beautiful. Castle Geyser's cone of sinter is believed to be the largest and oldest in the park. Its upper part is formed by the vigorous eruptions characteristic of geysers. Its lower has well-defined layers, probably deposited by hot springs. The underground water, when heated, picks up chemicals which are not readily soluble at ordinary temperatures. Silicon dioxide and bicarbonate of chloride are odorless. The unpleasant smell of brimstone, so often described by the early explorers, results from odoriferous mineral and gas compounds, such as sulfur, iron, and boron. Gases, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, and methane, are found in most of the waters. Carbon dioxide accounts for the bubbles found in thermal pools. Stark and desolate, these lifeless sentinels stand as a mute testimony to the encroachment of lethal waters. Inundated with the runoff waters of a hot spring or geyser, the silica-impregnated trunk base, thus petrified, may stand for decades as whitened skeletons. Non-eruptive thermal pools are not always as spectacular as geyser eruptions, but dissolved minerals deposited by the water give them a rich coloration. Brilliantly green, delicately blue, bejeweled by the bright red, yellow, and orange patches of algae, the living organisms that can thrive in its environment, hot springs are magnificently beautiful and often deadly. Under an apparently hard crust, boiling water may be dangerously near the surface. The coloration of a hot spring channel is due to the kinds and amounts of organisms present. In very hot water, the algae are palest yellow, growing progressively darker as the water flows away and cools. The organisms living in these hot waters are so perfectly adapted that they are found in no other environment. Excelsior Geyser has not erupted since 1888. From its gigantic crater, almost 6 million gallons of 200-degree water cascade daily through its colorful channels into the Firehole River. To climb the path into the white mist on a wintry day is to seem to enter the sphere of the underworld. The churning water is heard through the mist that does not muffle its ominous sound. Glimpsed through the patches of drifting steam is the boiling water, near, almost too near it seems. Its perimeters are stained with the vivid hues of the heat from its origins. Underneath the feet is the reassuring firmness of the boardwalk, and under the hand the steadiness of its wooden rail. The phantoms that pass by out of the steam are reassuringly human. Later, emerging from the warm dampness into the more prosaic world, the air is chill. Amid that which is bizarre and fantastic are the mud pots. Called mush pots by the trappers, there is almost a comforting resemblance to that pot of porridge simmering on a stove. Water in short supply is thoroughly mixed with clay and other colorful undissolved minerals, such as sulfur and iron oxides, resulting in the name paint pots. Gases, steam, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide rush from the earth through a fumarole's vent. Water seeping down to the zone of hot rock flashes into steam upon contact with the rock. The sudden increase in volume, nearly 2,000 times, produces the pressure which drives the gases from the vent. Hot water is the life of the Mammoth Hot Spring terraces. They are built of white travertine, a limestone that has been dissolved in hot carbonic acid and forced up through the rocks by thermal pressure. Once exposed to the open air, the acidity is reduced by the carbon dioxide escaping from the solution, and the lime is deposited as travertine. It is estimated that more than 2 tons of dissolved limestone is carried to the ground surface each day by the Mammoth Hot Springs water. Deposits of travertine may extend to a depth of 250 feet. The center, around a geyser basin in comparison, is only 10 feet or less. Jupiter and Minerva springs flow freely, creating the ornate travertine formations. Wherever hot water glistens on its surface, the formation is brilliantly colored from the great number of tiny living bacteria and algae. These remarkable springs are noted not only for their striking beauty, but their changeability. Deposition is rapid, and unpredictable shifts in water flow occur from day to day. When a pool overflows or an edge breaks, the water runs down and begins to form a lower terrace. Should the flow of hot water cease, the terrace growth will stop, the formations turn gray and black, and begin to crumble away. The terraces, once described as a mountain turned inside out, are the largest in the world. Yellowstone's wildlife show could be any visitor's most memorable experience. Appreciation and enjoyment of the park's wild creatures can be enhanced by a better understanding of how each fits into the intricate web of plant and animal life. A community in which each plays a vital role in the existence of the other. One of Yellowstone's greatest thrills is to watch a bear in spring roaming the valley bottoms. 2 kinds of bears reside in the wilds of the park. Black bears, probably the best known animal, and the grizzly. These 2 species, more than any other wildlife, epitomize the dilemma of coexistence, of man with beast. The grizzly, the largest and most formidable, is distinguished by the heavy build with a pronounced hump at the shoulders. In spite of his size, he can travel at tremendous speed and for a short distance outrun a horse. He is more wary of man, and fortunately not addicted to the panhandling or clowning traits of the black bear. Only in Alaska and western Canada are grizzlies still relatively abundant. They have been exterminated in all other areas except for rare exceptions. The high mountains and wilderness areas of the national parks and forests of Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming now support less than 1,000. Approximately 300 reside within Yellowstone National Park boundaries. Even in the preserves of the national parks, the black bears and grizzlies are now infrequently seen. They are not in hiding. They simply are not there. Humans have proven to be a destructive force to bears. Enticed by easily accessible sources of food supply, they have over the years formed feeding habits that are sometimes impossible to break. The attempt to return the bears to their natural habitat in the wild has not always been successful. Sometimes the feeding habits cannot be broken, and the bear must be destroyed to avoid endangering human life. Others cannot adjust to reorientation and die. Others are sometimes killed illegally. Both bear and bison are symbols of what man does to our fragile planet. Extinct, they are a testimony to man's preoccupation with himself and his needs. Alive, a symbol of understanding and freedom. Of all the benefits from Yellowstone National Park, this may be the greatest, that scores of nations have preserved areas of natural beauty and historical worth that, like Yellowstone, must endure unchanged, unspoiled, and unmolested next year, the year after, into the next century, and beyond. Unchanged, it was a dramatic ecological event, a display of one of nature's most spectacular powers that evokes a fundamental negative emotion in mankind: wildfire. Mantles of billowing thick smoke rose above raging flames, devouring a 200-year-old forest. A series of unusually high winds fanned the conflagration. Firestorms generated even more violent winds. This was the summer of 1988 in Yellowstone. The hot, rainless months of June, July, and August. The driest summer ever recorded in the park's 112-year written record. Natural fuels, accumulating on the forest floor since fire suppression began in 1886, were drying at an unprecedented rate. Since the Park Service's natural fire program was implemented in 1972, only man-made fires were being suppressed.
The National Park Service manages all fires that occur on National Park Service lands. In natural areas, in many cases, fire was an integral part and continues to be an integral part in maintaining what is natural. Sometimes fires are good. In every case, any fire that starts, the National Park Service looks at that fire and evaluates it to see if there are risks that are unacceptable, for example, the damage to developed areas.
But this summer, an unusual number of fires had begun, and on July 21st, the program was suspended. All fires were subjected to full suppression efforts as manpower would allow. Backfiring is a controlled fire set to starve all the fuel from an approaching fire.
We're going to try to fight fire with fire here and use the fire's own behavior against it. If we don't get the 2 miles of black line that we're hoping to get, the buffer zone between this line and the main fire, we're just going to have to fight this fire as hard and as best as we can.
By the end of September, about 1.1 million acres in Yellowstone National Park, 50% of the park, were affected by fire. However, only about half the vegetation burned within many fire perimeters. The lodgepole pine in Yellowstone begins to seed immediately following a fire.
The lodgepole pine, the predominant tree in Yellowstone, which makes up about 80% of the forest, is a fire-adapted species. Its cones are what we call serotinous, and the heat of the fires will actually stimulate the opening of the cones and dropping of seeds, which will then regenerate the forest into more lodgepole pine.
Yellowstone's most unusual and major attraction, the hydrothermal features, remain intact and undamaged by the fires. Secondary to the threat to human life and personal possessions is people's concern for the fate of wildlife during a forest fire. The illusion that animals flee in panic-stricken terror has been disproved. The fires of Yellowstone were not an isolated event, but part of an endless process. Nature must be unfettered so that the ecosystem and landscape can be as nearly primeval as possible. It is late September, and a new green carpet is pushing through the singed turf. Nature is self-healing. Yellowstone National Park's importance is not circumscribed by a temporary situation. Its relevance is not just for this year or this generation. Its value is in its continuing integrity, extending into the misty future.